Hello. Recently I asked people if they wanted to ask me questions on Twitter, and some people did, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to answer those questions. Okay, Cat Tortilla asked 3 questions. First question, how did you start becoming a VTuber? Well, I think VTubing is something that I had wanted to do for a little bit already, because I had seen Rhythm do it, I had seen Yuikai do it, I had seen Tia and Mira, Deet, and a bunch of, English-speaking VTubers, and I had heard them talk about it a bit too. Talk about it in the sense of them talking about the technical aspect of how it's done, and that kind of shifted it from something that is, impressive but mystical to something that I could maybe do myself, and that kind of gave me the courage to finally take the plunge and to ask Rhythm if I could commission her to do the penny model. And while she was making the model, I wrote the first pending skit. I actually wrote 2 different versions of the pending skit, and I showed Rhythm both versions of it to ask her what she thought, and she suggested one version of it over the other. But before the model was made, I had already had in my mind what the second skit was going to be about, because originally I had just thought up the concept of pending, and while I was kind of thinking up different things that I could potentially do, I came up with the idea of subtitles and the first initial few jokes. The first skit ended up not being very similar to how pending would eventually become, but the subtitles skit was the one, which is the second skit, was the one that kind of cemented pending as what he is. It has the part where subtitles asks, "Why don't I have a body?" and pending says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know how to make you a body." And then subtitles follows it up with, "Then why did you program me to want a body?" And pending says something along the lines of, "I think it's nice to have aspirations." That was kind of the first real joke that I ever wrote in a pending skit, and things kind of went from there. They got progressively sillier as things went on. Alright, the second question they asked was why cookies of all things. This one has a much shorter answer. I love cookies. There's no deeper lore reason as to why cookies. I just love cookies. So yeah, that's the answer to that. Third question, favorite Pokemon? Squirtle. When I was a baby, my first stuffed animal was this little thing called Salty, which was a little turtle. And Squirtle kind of looks like my childhood stuffed animal, so that's why I like Squirtle. So, Cake Magic asked, if time, skill, and money weren't a factor, what would you love to be able to produce or do? Could be related or not related to pending. The thing I would most like to make is a video game. As long as we're throwing what's realistic completely out of the equation, I would love to make a grand Final Fantasy styled video game. And I'd love to be the writer/producer of said video game. In fact, I actually at one point wrote a script for a video game. Nothing has really come of that script, but it still exists. So maybe someday if I were to win the lottery, probably I would need to win the lottery several times, but if someday I for some reason had those kind of resources, yeah, I'd try and make that grand RPG styled video game. And if time, skill, and money weren't a factor when it came to pending, I would make pending more animated in the sense that pending would have the ability to move around and stuff to a similar extent that Keys and I can. The other thing I'd love to do if money weren't a factor is I'd love to improve the audio quality, because I'm not too happy with the audio quality. It is what I can manage right now, and I work to try and improve it or make it as good as I can with what I have. So yeah, that's the 2 main things I'd love to do with pending that I can't really do because of financial considerations. Oh, and you know what? As long as we're daydreaming a little bit, I'd love to also have subtitles be there with a model that's just as animated as well. So that you can actually have physical interactions and stuff. And I could actually do physical comedy, because obviously it's hard to do physical comedy if they don't move, right? So, or if they barely move. So it would open a lot of doors writing-wise. So Ben Schneider asked, who is smarter, Tarik, pending, or subtitles? Subtitles. There's a thing in writing where a character can, to an extent, can only be as smart as the author, in the sense that if a character says something, then it needs to be to some extent grounded in what the author can know or what the author can research. but you can kind of fake it. So, like, canonically, she would be significantly smarter than I am. Fang/Hype Shiro asks, if you had never met this community, what would you have seen yourself doing instead? I guess I don't really know what I'd be doing. When you're happy in a situation, you're not necessarily looking for alternative things to do, right? So there are other things that I could have potentially found to do that I never even bothered to look for because I'm happy here. So I really don't know. It's so hard to say. But I'm happy here. So, I mean, it's not really something I worry about, right? Cheyenne asks, after driving in the US for a while, what are the notable differences that you saw? Well, I think probably the one that struck me the most is probably portion sizes. Like in the States, you get a lot more food for your buck than you do in Canada. Keep in mind, I only go to the States for like a week at a time, right? So I don't really get immersed in like the day-to-day life of living in the States. It's just like to see the sights and stuff. When you're on vacation, you go to a lot of restaurants. Like the other thing that really stuck out for me is that tea selection was pretty limited. And also in Canada, you know, peanut butter is something that you can get fairly regularly with your breakfast. But in the States, if you ask for peanut butter, they tend not to have peanut butter for one reason or another. Draco X asks basically the same question as Cheyenne, so yeah, portion sizes. Jacob Cole asks, my question would have to be, are you male or female? I am male. So is Pending, by the way. Pending is also a boy. I think there's some minor confusion about that, but I think most people know that Pending's a boy, and most people know that I'm a boy. I haven't really kept that a secret. I think I've been very open about the fact that I'm a guy. Shady Xion asks, do you pronounce poutine as poutine or Putin? Poutine. I've been calling Tora said Ben Schneider. I'm just realizing now it's Ben Schneider. Ben Schneider asked, how will you celebrate 1,000 subs? I don't have a specific plan for it. I'd love to do something special though, but I don't know what. I guess if people have like anything in particular they'd like to see, that would be nice. They also suggest maybe by finally releasing part 2 of the VTuber Wars. So the thing about the VTuber Wars is that's something that's a little out of my control because there's a lot of people that I still need lines for that to get going. A lot of people are very busy, so it's not a situation of they're just not making the time for it, it's that they don't have the time. So I don't want to really push anyone on it. For one thing, they're doing it as a favor to me in the first place. For another thing, you know, even if I were to push them, they have other things on their plate that they have to get done. So the VTuber Wars is something that I hope to continue at some point, but when it continues, I have to kind of just wait until schedules allow for it to continue. Which Pokemon starter would you want that isn't like an existing starter or a legendary? And that was asked by Green King. So I don't know the name of the Pokemon, but whatever Pokemon is the ice cream cone, I want that one. I want that one as my starter. AMS, what was Tarik doing before all of this? So what I was doing before all this was writing hockey articles as my form of employment, and I still do that, by the way. That's still my job. There was a time in my life where I was really into doing Star Trek role-playing on IRC, MIRC specifically. There's been times in my life where I've been super into a mobile game. Like, for about a year there, I was pretty into Final Fantasy Record Keeper. Speaking of games I got kind of obsessed with, World of Warcraft. I spent a lot of time playing World of Warcraft at one point. AM also asks, Penning is the skit character and who you are currently known as, right? That is correct. So Tarik is the name that I went by before Penning was ever a thing. When I originally joined Discord, Tarik was my name, so everyone on Discord would call me Tarik. Pending was the name of the character that I made for the skits. That said, people have taken to calling me Pending overall, and I kind of really have grown attached to the name Pending, so I am very happy if you want to just call me Pending. Obviously, me and the character are two separate things, but I'm happy with them both being called Pending, so please feel free to call me Pending as well. Captain Kellyan asks, I don't know if you already answered this or not, but what is your favorite book series and or genre to read? So sci-fi. Sci-fi is my favorite genre. As for my favorite book series, when I was a kid I loved the Animorph books, and I've read a lot of Star Trek books, of course. Also, what was one video game that made you cry? To the Moon made me cry a lot. Also, I don't know. Okay, big spoilers for Metal Gear Solid 3. At the end of Metal Gear Solid 3, when Snake is like standing over the grave of the boss and he does like the salute, that made me like super teary-eyed. I don't know why. Well, I guess I kind of know why, but regardless, that made me super teary-eyed. Oh, the Walking Dead video game, that made me so sad at the end. Final Fantasy IX. Oh, when Final Fantasy IX, when the "You Are Not Alone" music starts playing, that makes me so sad every time. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Yeah, that's from memory. I've listened to that song so many times. So the nice thing about when I sing is that the copyright idea system, like YouTube's copyright strike system, there's no way they're going to be able to recognize that as the original song, because my singing is nowhere near good enough that it picks it up as such. Mr. BB asks, what's your favorite video game series? Easily Final Fantasy. At least that was my favorite video game series growing up, was the Final Fantasy video game series. Later on, Mass Effect, maybe? Speaking of games that made me cry, there's so many teary-eyed moments for me in the Mass Effect games. Even Mass Effect 3, there's like some really amazing emotional parts in that. Like, I know everyone's like kind of considers Mass Effect 3 the black sheep for its ending, and you know what? That's fair. That's fair. And there's other things about Mass Effect 3 were questionable too. And I feel like it's kind of gotten to the point where Mass Effect 3 has kind of been seen as like the thing that dropped the ball and made Mass Effect not the masterpiece trilogy that it could have been. And I kind of feel like that too. But when you think about it, there's just so much good in that series. Oh man, I love that series so much. So yeah, shame about how things turned out, but man, that doesn't change the fact that there's so much good there. Metal Gear Solid, that was another favorite video game series of mine. Fun fact, I had like strep throat or something for a week when I was young, and like I had been bedridden for that time. And then on the last day that I was out of school for it, I was playing Metal Gear Solid in my bed, and my mom walks in and she's like, oh, I guess you're feeling better. And I'm like scrambling because I'm like, oh no, she's gonna make me go back to school. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm just doing this to distract myself from the from like the unending pain that I'm in. I didn't actually word it like that, but I might as well have. It's like I was trying to sell it as like, oh no, I'm still really sick, I'm just distracting myself from the disease. So, but no, she sent me back to school the next day. So yeah, but regardless, Metal Gear Solid, great series as well. Yeah, that was all the questions that I got asked. So I guess I'll end it here. If people want to ask more questions, if people want me to do this more often, I'd be happy to do this more often. So yeah, have a good day, everyone. Bye bye.